Korea is filled with history. Palaces, temples, and shrines dot the entire country. But you may have also noticed that Korea is covered in churches and cathedrals. The illuminated crosses and iconography can be seen in nearly every town or on every other block in major cities. But how did this happen? East Asian countries typically can trace religious roots to Buddhism or Confucianism. So how did this Western religion end up becoming the biggest religious denomination in South Korea? Who brought it here, and how does it fit into modern South Korean society today? Today, let's answer the question, why is Christianity so big in Korea? When you imagine Asian religions, the last thing that comes to mind is Christianity. You imagine Chinese Buddhist monks, Japanese Shinto shrines, and strict Confucian ideologies. While these are all relevant religions in East Asia, South Korea is unique in that the major religious belief doesn't fall into one of these, but in Christianity. The explosion of Christianity started as a trickle in the 1700s, expanded after the fall of Joseon, and exploded after the liberation from Japanese colonization. Today, around 31% of the population identifies as Christian, with 20% being Protestant and 11% being Catholic. But before this, what religion did the Korean people practice? Korea's history with religion is a very colorful one, with it changing quite a few times. As you might imagine, Christianity was non-existent before the late 1700s. During the Three Kingdoms period and the Goryeo dynasty, the primary religion was Buddhism, being brought by scholars and influenced by the regional hegemon, China. At the time, it was heavily supported by the various kingdoms and their rulers, and much of the social fabric was crafted by these ideologies. This would change when the Goryeo dynasty fell and the Joseon dynasty was established in 1392. King Taejo wanted to get rid of the Buddhist influence on the structure of his new kingdom, so Confucian ideals were implemented instead. It provided a more manageable social system based on hierarchy, family, respect, and ritual, which would eventually become a big point of contention for practicing Christians hundreds of years later. Christianity was first brought to Joseon in the 1600s by Confucian scholar Yi Su-gwang, a diplomat and academic who had visited China. During his trip, he acquired Western theological-inspired texts written by Matteo Ricci, who was an Italian Jesuit missionary who had been present in China. Upon returning to Korea, he began disseminating these texts and its information publicly. This became the first introduction of Christianity to Joseon and would bubble for many years before the next wave of influence. One of the first martyrs in the Catholic movement was Lee Seung-hoon, who was first exposed to Catholicism in Beijing while on a mission trip with his father. He was formally baptized in the spring of 1784, making him the first recorded example of a person of the Yangbang class to do so. When the movement grew in Korea, he and several other converts worshipped in secret in the spot that is now occupied by the Myeongdong Cathedral. In 1785, it was raided on suspicions of being a gambling den, and eventually Lee Seung-hoon would later become the leader of the worshippers, who eventually reached a member count of over 4,000 people. The Confucian influence on both the courts and society dictated that Christianity was viewed as potentially dangerous by King Jeongjo of Joseon, and he and his court carefully watched the growth of the religion dubiously. In 1787, it was banned and labeled as an evil practice, and when Catholic convert Yoon Ji-chung burned his family tablet, it was viewed as a defiance of the Confucian 3 bonds and 5 virtues. In turn, he was executed, and it triggered the Shinhae persecution, or Shinhae Bakke. These aimed at eliminating Christian influence not from the commoners, but from the nobles, or Yangban, that had much influence on the higher rungs of Joseon society. The first major persecution of the emerging Christian movement occurred in 1801 in what became known as the Shinyu persecution, or the Shinyu Bakke. The rising numbers and influence of Catholicism concerned Queen Jeongsun, who was acting as regent for her step-great-grandson, King Sunjo. In an effort to consolidate power and crush dissent, she swiftly ordered the persecution of the movement. Over 300 Catholics were arrested and executed, including Lee Seung-hoon, who was beheaded on April 8, 1801. These minor persecutions continued to take place until it culminated in the biggest of all, in 1866. During the reign of King Gojong and under the regency of his father, Heungsan Daewongun, Joseon was under stress of foreign influence, local dissatisfaction with the state of the country, and an overall frustration with the monarchy. Foreign nations led an onslaught of efforts to open up Joseon to international trade, and in August 1866, Joseon forces sunk a United States merchant ship, the SS General Sherman, on the Taedong River. 2 months later, the French launched an expedition in retaliation for the execution of 7 French missionaries. The French forces anchored at Ganghwa Island for 6 weeks and occupied it. Joseon forces managed to kill 3 French soldiers and injure 36 before French forces retreated. These incidents forced King Gojong's father, Heungsan Daewongun's hand, and in an effort to limit foreign influence and resist opening up the country. For the next 6 years, he ruthlessly ordered the capture and execution of over 8,000 Catholics. Religious texts were burned, centers for worship were razed, and iconography was destroyed, causing many to denounce Catholicism altogether. On a fundamental level, Catholicism flew in the face of what Confucianism stood for in Joseon. A king appointed by the heavens and the hierarchy of Joseon society based on class was not accepted in Catholic beliefs, as everyone was equal under God. Catholics also rejected the idea of ancestral rites, or 제사, which was a very important point in Confucianism. The royal family felt that it was becoming too influential and dangerous to the stability of the whole Confucian foundation that Joseon was built on. This would change in 1876 after the Treaty of Ganghwa with Japan, which opened up international trade for the first time. It became clear that religion could no longer be persecuted or suppressed in the way it had been, so tensions eased. Missionaries were given protection by trade treaties, churches were rebuilt, and Catholics began practicing openly again. In 1882, Korea signed a trade treaty with the United States, which opened up the country even further. American missionaries could now legally enter Korea under the protection of this treaty without the threat of persecution. Horace Newton Allen, a physician and ambassador, came to Korea and after treating Min Young-ik, a minor royal who had been injured during a coup attempt, became friendly with King Gojong. Impressed by Western medicine, he opened Daejungwon, now known as Severance Hospital, while Horace Newton Allen opened the first college of Western medicine in Korea. He later became part of the American legation in Korea and at the request of King Gojong helped open the Korean legation in the United States. During this time, Horace Grant Underwood and Henry Appenzeller both arrived in Korea working as missionaries. They worked to translate the Bible into Hangul, an effort which had not seen much fruition before this. Horace Grant Underwood went on to establish the YMCA in Korea and went on to become the president of both Pyeongtaek University and the Joseon Christian College, the latter which would become one of Korea's top schools, Yonsei University. Henry Appenzeller went on to establish Baeje University, created the first Korean Methodist Church, the first Christian newspaper, and introduced Western music through his institutions. Protestantism grew so fast with the common people mainly because an effort was made to translate the Bible into Korean. They worked to better the social security of the people through schools and hospitals, promoted equality, and pushed for modernization. In 1910, the Korean Empire was dissolved, and Korea was annexed by Japan. In an effort for Japan to appear civilized and evolved like Western powers, Christianity was tolerated despite being monitored closely. This ability to freely worship also aided in the independence movement, as many churches were used as meeting spots for freedom fighters, away from the watchful Japanese gaze during the March 1st movement. Because of the influx of Korean nationalism affiliated with the churches and its members, Japan started to suppress its growth and visibility. During the 1930s, Japan mandated that all Koreans pay respect to the emperor and Shinto shrines, which caused unrest among Christian communities. It contradicted the monotheistic nature of Christianity and was viewed as idolatry. Many did as they were told under pressure, but many who did not were imprisoned or tortured. This would be the case until Korea was finally liberated from Japan in 1945. Following the war, Korea had a lot of building to do in terms of infrastructure and social services. Many people from the grassroots movements from Korean independence had been Christians, elevating the image of the religion in the country. Korea's first president, Lee Seung-man, was a Methodist Christian, and it became a symbol of freedom, democracy, and independence. This was the opposite of communist North Korea, which was brutally suppressed by the regime of Kim Il-sung. Many Christians had fled the persecuted North to the Free South in the years before the Korean War. During the early years of building up South Korea, massive amounts of aid was given by the United States, with many institutions having Christian ties. They built schools and hospitals, promoted modern education, and funded social programs, cementing Christian values into the very fabric of Korean society. In the modern day, Christianity is not just a religion in South Korea. It is in many ways its foundation, representing its history of political struggle, economic rise, and national identity. Despite its ruthless suppression in the early days, its introduction is viewed by many as the turning point from a feudal monarchical society to a rich and developed nation. If you like this video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe so you can see more videos just like this.